Okay, so I'm going to go through. I have about, I don't know, 9 lectures here for the econ side of things. The intro to the machine one I've already made a sort of lecture for, but I did change at least one slide, I know for sure, so I'm just going to redo it. But I'm hoping to go through all 9 of these in one day. I actually genuinely have no clue if that's possible, considering it's probably going to take like 10 hours. Um, but we're going to go through it. So let's start with intro to the machine. So how to view economics? Well, economics is generally split into macro and microeconomics. So macroeconomics is generally high level. This is like overall economy. So like utility, money, debt, unemployment, GDP, resource use, taxes, deficits, whatever. This list goes on for a long time. These are just really like high level concepts essentially. Like you're not gonna you're gonna pull out equations, but it's not gonna be something that you can easily put in an equation. So these concepts are gonna be they're really rather hard to combine into a central equation, and to be honest, it's actually impossible to combine into a central equation. You can tell I haven't looked at these slides in a long time because I'm just repeating and then I'm going, whoa, I wrote that. So anyway, macro cannot be forced into a function. It's really, really hard to. On micro, though, it's incredibly possible to force everything into a function, and so that's what they do. So micro is really low level. It's just problems that can be very easily defined. So like markets, firm decision making, profit losses, really easy questions. So these are concepts where it's really easy and preferable to just use an equation. You don't really want to think. So macroeconomic problems are problems that are easy to solve. They can at times take multiple hours to solve, but they're not like difficult. These are just tedious. They require no creativity. The problem is microeconomics is really easy because you just put it into a function. Macroeconomics is really, really hard because you can't really put it into a central function. So academic economics use macroeconomics as a problem that needs an equation. It's simply not the case. It's literally impossible to do so. So the interactions that take place, these are not interactions that require equations. These are interactions that require a logical machine. And what do I mean by a logical machine? I mean like a state machine, a Turing machine, a program model, whatever you want to call it. So over here left, this is like a diagram of the Turing machine that Alan Turing invented. And then on the right here, this is like essentially the most advanced macroeconomics is. Like this is how academics views the economy, which is, just astounding. So they essentially just have a 3-variable function here. And it's like, I don't know, what do you expect to gain from that? The answer is nothing. So macroeconomics is actually a computer science problem. So this isn't something you're just going to have one equation for. What you need to do is create a computer to do this. So humans, money, debt, firms, institutions, banks, these all need to be defined as entities. These all need to have their own variables and their own interactions between them. So the solution also needs to be as abstract as possible so that way it can apply to the real world. Essentially what we're doing is we're creating a logical machine for the real world. And that's what I say here. We're just creating a logical machine for the real world, and it's going to be super abstract, and it's going to help us visualize what's happening in the real world. We're just going to mathematically define interactions. So this is going to help us visualize how the economy works, how natural resources and land are used, how money works, how debt works. These are really there's about 20 questions you could probably answer with the machine. The machine is really, really good at its job. And later on, I'll talk why it's so good and why it was kept secret for so long. I didn't keep it secret. The machine was actually invented in the 50s and kept secret. Fun fact, or spoiler alert, I guess. So finally, we're going to be able to draw conclusions about the machine. And because the machine was an abstract view of the real world, the conclusions we draw to about the machine are also conclusions about the real world. So right off the bat, there's 4 components to the machine. You have time, reality, humans, and the S&D field. Time is actually rather simple. It's going to be really simple. Reality and humans are really simple. Just humans is a tiny bit complicated. And the S&D field is a bit complicated, but frankly, you're never actually going to need to use it. This is just how I formally defined the interaction between reality and humans. But if you're scared of not understanding the S&D field, just don't worry. I'll just walk you through it. And if you don't even understand it, it doesn't actually even matter. So anyway, let's start with time. Time is simply just a discrete number, and discrete just means whole in case you don't know. So it's like 0, 1, 2, 3, 10, 100, whatever. It's literally just a whole number of any size. So time is also measured in the smallest possible units, though. So I'm not saying seconds or milliseconds here. I'm talking pico, on and on forever seconds. These are just abysmally small. It's almost so useless it's small. Time always moves forward, and then there's two terminologies. So the first one is moment in time. So when I say moment in time, I'm talking a strict moment in time. So like t equals 1, t equals 123, maybe t equals 5, t equals 7, whatever. And then slice of time is just any period of time. So like 10 years, 1 week, I don't know, maybe t equals 10 to t equals 11, t equals 5 to t equals 60. It doesn't matter. So the second component we're going to talk about is reality. And you got to think about reality as just the Matrix from the movie The Matrix. It's just the material world, essentially. And I want you to include your body in this too. So like touch your skin, touch your arm. This is part of reality. This is not part of humans. So this is measured in the smallest possible units. Again, on time, we have pico, 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 on and on forever seconds. I don't know much about quantum mechanics or physics. I know the atom exists. I think quark is the smallest thing. So just assume this is measured in quark. I'm a computer scientist, so I'm just going to do zeros and ones. But it doesn't matter. Just assume that reality is measured in the smallest possible unit. And then the other two assumptions is that reality does not have free will and that reality changes over time. So we have two functions for reality. The first one is RFT, and the second one is delta RFT. We'll get into what those are in a bit. And we connect the present and the future of reality with RFT equals delta RFT minus 1. This is simply just us bridging time. Don't worry about that. We'll come back to it. So RNT and delta RFT, this is just going to output all information about reality in a given moment. And I mean strictly all information. Nothing will be held back. So in the real world, this would be like literally terabytes upon terabytes upon terabytes of information. And I mean like that, terabyte to the power of terabyte to the power of terabyte. You're not going to be able to run the machine, and we'll see that later, but it doesn't matter. This outputs all raw information about reality. And then we have one terminology here, which is the state of reality. And this is just the output of RFT or delta RFT given a t. And we're just going to call the output the state of reality in that moment in time. So let's familiarize ourselves with RFT. So what does this look like? First, let's put in t of 0 and see what RFT returns. Well, it's just a bunch of zeros and ones. Rather useless. What happens when we try t equals 0 again? It's the exact same string of zeros and ones. What happens if we try t equals 1? Well, it's a different string of zeros and ones. This one goes 1, 1, 1. The old one went 0, 1, 0, blah, blah. If we try t equals 1 again, is it going to return the same thing? Just how t equals 0 return the same thing? Yes. RFT is always going to return the same output given the same input. So in other words, if you give RT the same t over and over and over and over, you're going to get the same output over and over and over and over. So let's visualize RFT. Well, again, we have R of 0 and R of 1, but you visualize them over here, they're the same picture. Well, what gives? Well, time is measured in the smallest possible unit. So when you move forward in time by 1, really just about nothing is going to happen. So do we have to visualize reality this way? You can have a picture of zeros and ones. No. RFT outputs raw data. You can do whatever you want with it. We're simply just making this to formalize interactions later. If you don't even want to care what the output looks like, be my guest. It doesn't matter. So delta RFT, this is just a function that returns the state of reality that exists after RFT. This is literally just the next step forward in time. So if we do delta RFT, or delta R of 0, it's going to get 1, 1, 1. This is the exact same thing we got from R of 1. Why? Well, because R of t equals delta R of t minus 1. So we do t equals 1 here, and then we have a bridge equation here. And then we just say R of 1 equals delta R of 1 minus 1. Well, R of 1 equals delta R of 0. What is this saying? The state of reality at t equals 1 equals the next state of reality at t equals 0. In other words, the state of reality at 1 is literally the next moment is the next moment forward in time of t equals 0. So this is simply our bridge equation. We're just going to bridge the present and the future with this. Again, the low level is really only being fleshed out to quell the haters. So if you don't understand it, even though there's not much to understand, if you don't understand, it's fine. It doesn't actually matter. So the final note on reality. Reality does not have free will and thus is deterministic. So in other words, hypothetically, you could calculate the future state of reality given the present state of reality. It would require a lot of information, a lot of computing power, and frankly, I don't think it would actually be worth it. Let's move on to the third component, and let's move on to humans. So this is the human element to the real world. Humans have internal utility, and you gain utility from actions. Humans have free will. Humans have subjections of reality, and those subjections are never perfect. Humans interact with reality based on their subjections too. Humans are inventive. This one's incredibly important. We'll come back to this. And humans have to take one action per moment in time. And we'll see what that means later. So the human functions are literally just copy paste from reality. Again, we don't really care about the low level. And we're gonna bridge the present and the future the exact same with h of t equals delta h of t minus 1. So we say h of t and delta h of t. Delta h of t, this is just going to output all information about humans in the given moment. There's not much past that. And then, so like we have h of 0 here is 0, 1, 0, 1, whatever. And then h of 1 is different. You have 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. It doesn't matter. So then state of humans, this is the exact same about reality, but for humans. So it's just h of t instead of r of t. And we're going to visualize it the same way here in a second. I'm just going to give you boxes to go off of. So for now, let's assume humans and reality do not interact, because when they do, it gets a little complicated a little fast. So each red box here represents a state of reality, and each green box is a state of humans. So you'll notice the reality chain is really clean. There's only one possible future per present state. It just moves forward very cleanly, very linearly. Humans is not clean at all. There's a lot of actions that can take in any moment. So right now I have 4 going out from t equals 0. Technically, there's an infinite amount, but I didn't want to do that many arrows, so just assume there's actually an infinite amount. So we notice that infinity here, there's only one state of reality because it's deterministic. But for humans, because those are non-deterministic, there's technically an infinite amount of possible states of humans at infinity. But it's important to understand this does not mean that there are multiple futures of humans, just that there are multiple possible futures of humans. Only one of the futures will take place. I accidentally went backwards. So human subjections. Let's say if r of t returned the left. So let's say the state of reality at time equals 10 was this. So where you have a square, a triangle, an oval, and a pentagon. But you have a human in the middle here, Bob, where it's subjecting it, and the subjections we're viewing on the right. So it's important to note Bob's subjection is not perfect. So he has the pentagon and the triangle flipped around. Is Bob wrong here? Is he dumb? Well, you can't really say that he's dumb. You might be going, well, it's really easy to see that there are 4 shapes here in the order. Just about none of the subjections you have are 100% perfect either. So Bob here makes a mistake, so too do you. So Bob has to take an action in every moment in time, though. So again, over here on the right, we have r of t. This is this column. Then we have Bob's subjection of r of t. And then the first row is at t equals 10, and the next row is the moment after at t equals 11. But Bob has to make a move at t equals 10. So let's say hypothetically he switches the top left and the top right shapes. Well, we know for sure that t equals 11, based on t equals 10, that the reality has to have those top 2 shapes flipped. The problem is Bob's subjection was wrong. So how is his subjection going to look at t equals 11? Well, frankly, he could have realized his error. He could have not. We don't really know, and we don't really care. We just understand that Bob's subjection might be wrong, but he still has to make an action anyway. Well, what is utility? Utility is literally just happiness, joy, pleasure, whatever. This is something that academics has formalized, so thank God I don't have to climb up that hill and die on it. Even though it really wouldn't be a hill, it would be a mountain, but you know. Academics is fine saying utility is happiness, and this is what people maximize through actions, so thank God. So humans will try to maximize utility through their actions, but human subjections of reality aren't perfect, and thus humans are never going to be able to fully gain the maximum amount of utility per moment. Sometimes this is called Pareto efficiency, where it's 100% perfect efficiency. You're never going to actually have Pareto efficiency, and the reason is because human subjections are never going to be perfect. It's just not possible. So in a given moment, there are multiple actions possible. However, humans may only take one action per moment. So down here we have green. This is the objective utility change, but yellow is the subjective utility change. This is what they believe is going to happen. So in the example below, there are 3 possible futures. We have B, C, and D for one present, A. So then the question is, well, which present is going to come true? We have 3 possible futures, but only one of them come true. Which one is it? Well, it depends on what action Bob takes. If he takes the action, he's going to take the action that he believes is going to maximize his utility. So here we can look, and we can say objectively from A to B it's plus 10, but subjectively it's plus 20. A to C has 15 objectively and subjectively 10, and then A to D has objectively 20 and subjectively 8. Bob is going to maximize his utility based on his subjections. So of course he's going to choose this plus 20 here, and he's going to go A to B. The problem is Bob's kind of an idiot here. He actually chose the action with the least amount of objective utility. But luckily for Bob, ignorance is bliss. He doesn't know that the other ones were better. So as far as he's concerned, he took the maximum amount of utility. So we're going to visualize the timeline again. Again, this was what it was before when everything was disconnected. There were no actions. And then this is what we have now. So humans in reality now interact through human actions. So now the states do move together. So they're no longer independent. It's rather messy now. Again, it's important to note at infinity, you now have an infinite number of possible states of reality. It's not just a linear state anymore. So let's notice a couple things. First off, scale is irrelevant. Because reality and time were measured in the smallest possible units, and reality and time change over the small increments, we can just say reality and time. We can view reality and time at any scale without losing information. So this is the idea behind integration in calculus. You're simply aggregating a bunch of small changes together into a single change. So right on this top timeline, I have the default unit where it's like 0, 1, 2, whatever. And then we zoom out 10x. So 0 to 10 is now 0 to 1, and 10 to 20 is now 1 to 2. And the problem is even a 10x zoom out is way too small. It's just going to be abysmal. But the solution is, instead of zooming out over and over and over, we're literally just going to find a scale we want to look at. We don't actually have to zoom out over and over. So in the financial system, usually it's months, quarters, and years. But on the human life, generally it's days, weeks, and years. Frankly, it doesn't matter. So just notice you have 0 to 7 days is now just 0 to 1 weeks. And then 0 to 52 weeks is just 0 to 1 year. The scale is just whatever you want it to be. And this is true for reality too, because scale, because we said, well, reality is measured in the smallest units. We can just say reality is viewed at whatever scale we want. So if we want to look at molecular, cellular, human, it doesn't matter. If you want to say a fire truck, well, we'll get to that later. Scale is irrelevant for reality. Humans cannot be viewed smaller or larger. The problem is their interaction with, or the great part is the interaction is with reality, and reality is measured on the smallest level, and thus the human interaction is measured on the smallest level. It doesn't matter that you can't scale up humans itself up or down. You can scale those actions up or down. So let's get into the S&D field. This, again, I said it was going to be a tiny bit confusing, but not by much. It'll be generally straightforward. So the S&D field is just going to be how we're going to view the interactions between humans and reality. So there are two parts to the S&D field. Number one is supply, which comes from reality, which is the red box again. And number two is demand, which comes from humans. So in a moment in time, humans can make demands of reality. This would be like riding a bike, driving a car, taking a test, simply breathing. It could even be not breathing or moving at all. This is just what you're demanding of your body, essentially, and by proxy, reality. So if you raise your arm right now, you're just demanding that your arm be raised. This is a demand that is connecting. If you want to move your toes, you're now demanding that your toes move. If you want to breathe, you're demanding your breathing. If you want to drive your car, you're driving your car. That's your demand. So human actions are what changes reality. These actions, we're going to call them demands, are represented with arrows. And then reality is what is changed by human actions. This is now supply, and we're going to represent this with shapes. So supply and demand connect when an action takes place. So for instance, if you're eating a banana, you're now having an S&D connection between you and the banana. It's important to understand, all S&D connections change the utility of all humans. And that's really important to understand. All S&D connections change the utility of all humans. The degree does vary, though. So if you kick a rock in your living room, just about nobody is going to care, not even your next door neighbor. Certainly not a Chinese or a Russian kid halfway around the world. They're just not going to care at all. But if you detonate, 10 million nuclear bombs, well, they're going to care because it's going to start affecting them. So generally, the utility change from an S&D connection is just about going to be zero. That's going to be 99.99% of all utility changes. Technically, I should say 0.00001, but it'll be just about zero. So let's visualize this. So there's a couple of notes. Number one is location is irrelevant. So we have a shape 1 and a shape 2 over here. These could be right next to each other in the real world, but in the visualization, they're far apart. Frankly, location doesn't matter. It means literally nothing here. Number two is the shape at the tip of the arrow. This is the supply that demand wants to connect with. So this arrow right here is a circle. It wants to connect with a circle. And this is just any circle, by the way. This is not a specific circle. So this arrow has a triangle. This just means it wants to connect with any triangle. So just because a demand exists, this is number three. Just because a demand exists doesn't mean it's going to connect. So I want to retire in Italy. Just because that demand exists doesn't mean it's going to connect. I'm not going to retire in Italy. It's just not going to happen. And then most importantly, scale is irrelevant. Again, because reality, time, and humans, scale was irrelevant. Well, on the S&D field, scale is irrelevant. So the S&D field over time. Because reality and humans change over time, so too does the S&D field. And we can see shortages and surpluses here. So at t equals 10 right here, there's a surplus of one circle and then one square, and there's a shortage of one triangle. And I'm going to show the connection with a little lightning bolt. So right here, you see this demand right here. It connects with this supply. And then I moved this demand over. This demand with a circle now connects with the supply that is a circle. And finally, it turns into a square. So this would change from a triangle to a circle to a square over t equals 10 to t equals 11. Again, all S&D connections change the utility of all humans, just to varying degrees. And 99.99% of them is just going to be 0. That's going to be the change. So we have a question. Can two demands connect with the same supply? Yes. But when you're viewing the S&D on the smallest possible scale, the answer is no. So in the example below, we have two demands connect with a triangle. But on a smaller scale, we see that they're actually connecting with different things here. So originally, the two demands both wanted a triangle. They both connect with the triangle. But on a smaller scale, the two demands actually wanted two things. They wanted a circle and a square. And you can see there's two circles and a square inside the triangle. So when the original demands were connecting with the triangle, they were actually just connecting with something inside the triangle. So this might be two people want to connect with a factory. One wants to open the refrigerator and one wants to turn on a machine. Well, they both are technically interacting with the factory, just on varying supplies inside the factory. So the smallest connections between humans and reality are minute. This is like quarks again. So on the smallest possible scale, you're independently connecting with quarks. No two people can connect with the same quark. If that is possible in real life, then just assume that there's another level below that. And by level below that, I mean like quark, and then like, I don't know what is below a quark. This is one of the most important things we're going to look at, though, is humans are very inventive. So humans are very smart, and this allows them to create technology. So in academics, technology is also called TFP, technology for production. I actually really like the name TFP, even though we're not just using it for production. I'm just saying technology. So moving forward, I'm going to call all technology TFP, just because it's really fun to say TFP. And we can see TFP is actually, there's no proof that it's exponential in real life, but TFP is exponential in real life. So you can see we had the wheel, and then we have the steam engine, then you have nuclear tech, then computers, then AI. It's just exponential over time. And again, scale is irrelevant. We don't actually have to like mark any of the axes here. It doesn't matter. But what is TFP? Well, TFP allows for more possible S&D connections. And it also allows for S&D connections with higher magnitude utility change. So when we hit like nuclear technology, you can make a nuclear reactor. You can also make a nuclear bomb. When you have AI, you can make a really benevolent AI, or you can make a killer death robot. So there's a bifurcation here, a positive and a negative, and it gets higher as your TFP gets higher. So the economy, because we've now defined the S&D field and have S&D connections to visualize how utility changes in humans, we can now just call the S&D field the economy. This is the economy. So utility and utility changes based on supply and demand. This is the primary focus of the study of the economy. So private property, money, debt, etc. These are all secondary. Primarily, the only thing that matters is supply and demand. And now, because we've really formally and easily defined the economy, we can now formally and easily define economic efficiency. And this is simply actual utility change over the maximum possible utility change. So we have three states down here, one in the present and two possible futures. So A goes to B with a utility change of 5, and A goes to C with a utility change of 10. If B came to fruition and not C, then economic efficiency would actually be 5 over 10, or 50%. And then if A went to C, then it would be 100% economic efficiency, because you would have perfect utility gain. Again, Pareto efficiency is not going to be possible. You're never actually going to have 100%. It would be really rare to have 99. I think that would be hard. But just understand the 100 is not going to be possible. No one's subjections are perfect. So I'm going to give you a tool to view this level. And this is called the utility wave. So we could finally create a tool to visualize either someone or multiple persons' lives. And what you're going to do is just visualize their utility change over time. So let's start with Bob. And then we're going to move on to multiple people. So over on the right here, we have Bob's life. And you can see, first off, he starts at 0 utility at birth, and then he ends at his death at 0. So you can notice right off the bat, he had a rather good childhood, positive, whatever. Maybe he gets married in his 30s and he has a really good time. Then his marriage falls apart, or it just stagnates, and then he's back here. Then his marriage falls apart. Maybe he gets a divorce. He's down here. And then he comes back up. Maybe he gets his life back together. He has one last, let's go. And then he, stagnates and then dies. So what do you think of Bob's life? And then how would your life look? And pause if you want. Frankly, I don't really care. So let's average out these waves. So we have a bunch of people's lives over here, but we don't care about individuals. We care about people as a whole, the whole nation. So what are we going to do here? The most effective way to just do this is just average out all the waves. So I think I did a pretty good job here averaging out these 3 waves. And we'll notice that the average is really strictly positive. This would be a pretty good wave in my opinion. But we can also finally declare what a boom and a bust is. So if we average everyone together, we can easily see booms and busts. No, so booms don't have a really common name that everyone throws around, which is really weird. But busts are really commonly thrown around, and these are called recessions and depressions. But it's really important to understand that busts are just the down, but you do have an up too. So booms are when utility goes up, and busts are when utility goes down. This would strictly be for utility wave. When you hear boom and bust everywhere else, they're going to be talking about the money system or the debt system or the economy, not utility. But in the machine, the utility is the bottom layer. So booms and busts are going to be defined in the bottom layer. So let's conclude. We've successfully created a logical machine to act as an abstract view of the real world. Are we ever going to be able to run it? Never. Absolutely not. You're never going to be able to call these functions. You're never going to be able to get the raw output. But that doesn't matter. We live in the output of this machine. We're just mathematically defining the abstract view of real life. So there were 4 components: time, reality, humans, and the S&D field. And so far, we were able to see how TFP worked, utility waves for individuals and averages of groups, the economy, economic efficiency, and booms and busts. And then I'm going to throw this to you every lecture, and I'm going to say, how confident are you in academics? So earlier we said, earlier we viewed how academics views macroeconomics, and they literally just use an equation over here with 3 variables. Notice how little complexity this had. Our model is in our infancy, and it's already more complex, and we can already glean more from it than the equation. So in my opinion, academics has really no clue what it's doing. Now, we've only touched on the bottom system here, which is humans in reality. You don't know what any of these other systems are, but that's fine. This is just how it'll look. And right now I just showed you the bottom. I think that's it. And then we'll go to the next one soon.